Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 3 of Operating Systems and File Management. All right, so let's take a look at the administrative tools that are out there for Windows. You can adjust the power settings, and shutdown closes all the files and apps and turns off the power. And the only thing that you need to do is just tell it, okay, that's it, I'm done. Sleep options. Sleep stores the current state of the open programs and files, saving you time when you resume using your device. I don't know if I've ever used the sleep option, but maybe I should. Battery usage is low power mode. So let's say that you have a laptop that you're running and you want to be notified when it gets down to, say, 20%. At that point, it starts letting you know that, hey, you're about to lose everything if you don't power down in a normal way. Either that or plug it in. And sometimes you're in a place where you can't plug it in, so it's time to shut it down. All right, disk cleanup utility. For every program that you have out there, there's temporary files that get loaded, there's download program files that get loaded. All of these take up space on your hard drive because they don't go away. This utility actually goes in and says, hey, I see X amount in downloaded program files. I see X amount in temporary files. I might see some memory being used in your cache. It just goes through everything and basically looks for anything that it can pull out. These aren't important files, but they were important when you were loading. So you tell it, you put a little check mark next to the items that you want to have cleaned up on your hard drive, and it will go in and reallocate, blah, re, reallocate those files. So that way you'll be able to use those for something useful instead of holding up 10 gig in temporary files that you'll never use again. Now, some of the file utility programs also in there is the file management. It gives you an overview of the stored files and lets you open, rename, delete, move, and copy files and folders. Search tool finds files that meet the criteria that you specify, such as characters in a file name or save date. File compression reduces the size of the file up, takes up less storage space. Compressed files often have a zip file extension. You need to be decompressed or unzipped before they can be opened. One word of caution when it comes to using compression software. If your hard drive is to the point where you have to use compression software to give you some space to move around, it's time to start looking at another hard drive or an extension, or just adding another drive to your machine, because you can also end up filling up your hard drive with compressed files, and when they try to decompress or try to open, you're not able to open them because there's not enough room to allow it to open. So be careful with that one, okay? All right, setting apps that contain touch-friendly categories of the most commonly used Windows settings. This is one of those where you can, in the old days, it had a different look to it. You could, actually, they're showing you side by side what they used to look like. On the new one, they show you system security and so forth. On the left-hand side is kind of the old way of showing it to you. It's the control panel. And in the control panel, it's a collection of utility programs that determine how Windows appears and performs on your computer. Shortcut menu is a list of frequently used commands that relate to the object typically displayed by right-clicking. Dialog boxes are options where there are radial buttons. Radial buttons only allow you to select one button, that's it. Round buttons that preset one choice, also called a radial button. check boxes or square boxes that represent a yes, no choice and displays a check mark or X when selected. List boxes are the options that appear when you click an arrow in the dialog box. Some list boxes allow you to make multiple selections. These are just the different types of selection that you can do within a dialog box. All right, so if you want to run more than one operating system, you can do it by way of virtual machine. It requires an app that's specifically designed to set up and manage virtual machines. Installation files for operating systems to run on a virtual machine are also required. And it runs on a partition. When they say partition, they mean that your hard drive has been broken into pieces, not physical pieces, but electronic pieces. And let's say that you have a, oh no, maybe a tera drive, a 2 tera drive hard drive. Well, if you want, you can break that into 2 parts or 4 parts or whatever it is that you wish. So one part you're running 1 terabyte of OS 10, Windows 10, and on the other one, you're running OS 7, Windows 7. Now, between those two, if you have software that only runs in Windows 7, you'll have to run that on your virtual machine. But it will run and it will act like it doesn't know anything about Windows 10 at all. Pretty slick, actually. Manage user accounts. The user accounts identify the resources a user can access when working with the computer. If you're the administrator, you get to control that. For example, my wife uses my computer from time to time, so I gave her her own login, and this means that she won't be in messing with my settings. But it does give you an opportunity to control who and what has access to what on your computer. Protect your computer against unauthorized access. The administrator account provides full access. You may not want to give full access to a person that doesn't really understand what that means. Manage files and folders. You can compress and uncompress your files. You can save files to a folder and filing systems, determine file properties by giving rights on who, for example, you can make it read only, or you can have them only be able to edit, only to see it, but they can't write to it. Manage file names and file placement. Manage folder names and folder placement. Organize files using the file management tools. Now, compress and uncompress files. File size is usually measured in kilobytes, thousands of bytes of data, megabytes, or millions of bytes of data, gigabytes, billions of bytes of data. Files and folders may need to be compressed before they can be shared or transferred. There's a limit to how large a file you can send through email. And because of that, some folks actually compress the file. And basically what it's doing is it creates a secondary file that says, oh, I've got so many blanks in this spot and this spot and this spot. And what it does is it keeps up with all of that. So it compresses it down to just the simple ones. And once it does that, when you decompress it, it goes back to that file and says, okay, I had so many zeros at this point, I had so many zeros at this point, and so forth. So it expands it back out. But you're limited to how big a zip file you can actually send. And unfortunately, there's some software out there that if it sees a self-exploding file, it will not allow it to be sent as an email. So what some people do to avoid that is they change the extension in hopes that the person at the other end will change the extension back, and therefore they'll be able to run the program the way it was it was intended to be. Save files to folders and filing systems. Name the file. save to a computer flash drive or cloud. And if creating or editing a file, it should be saved frequently. I can't stress that enough. If you have a file that you're working with, you want to make sure that you do save as often as possible, because there's nothing worse than seeing your work go away because maybe you had a power glitch. If creating or editing a file, you should save frequently. I said it again. Files you work on using a web app save changes as you make them. Use the Save As or Save and Copy dialog box to save a file with a new name or in a new location. All right, so we talked a little bit about file properties and how you can control those. Every file has properties such as a name, type, location, and size. It also has a date when the file was created and modified last, access. All right, so the operating system assigns some properties to files such as the type or format and updates other properties such as the date and the size and location. You'll also find in there in the properties the ability to say, I want to put a password lock on this. So people that you don't want in on that file, you can block them out. That was the end of part 3. Stay tuned for part 4, and we'll see you at part 4. Thank you.